Hi guys, welcome to our second session for week 1. Our next lecture will be Wednesday, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. Tonight, hi Lori. Tonight we are going to go over the week 1 overview. We're going to talk about the discussion for week 1. So we're going to discuss a little bit of user interface, user experience, and have a little bit of a question and answer if anybody has any questions. And we're going to do a demo on the assignment for week 1. Your discussion this week. Digital animation has become so prevalent in online and mobile content that graphic designers are being asked more and more to conceptualize these mini movies to advertise a product or service for their clients. These are not video commercials. They are animated graphics that are engaging, fun to watch, and interact with, and capture an audience's attention. For the first part of this discussion, research what the role is for a graphic designer in digital animation and what type of things need to be considered to create good user experience. The best practice for creating good UI, user interface, when creating these animations. Write a summary of your findings to be sure to cite your source. ProQuest and Sharp links, that sort of thing. Do you have to use ProQuest and Sharp? No, you do not, guys. You can use a website, a blog. Just make sure you cite it for me. For the second part of the discussion, find one example of what you think is effective digital animated advertising in your own words and tell me why. Refer to the research you did in the first part and help express your reasons. Be sure to include the link for your example. User interface. User interface is the look and feel, the presentation and interactivity of a product. User interface is multifaceted and challenging. It is responsible for the transference of a product's development, research, content, and layout into an attractive, guiding, and responsive experience for users. The UI role is crucial to any digital interface and for customers, a key element to a trusting brand. Essentially, UI design, the process, UI experience itself, user interface itself is, you can think of it as being a product's skin. And the visual graphic presentation. This is the side UI is going to, you guys are really going to be able to relate to UI as graphic designers because you're all about the visual, the font type, the colors, what the layout is. All of that is a big part of user interface. It senses the product's reactivity and interactivity in response to a user's input or different display environments, and make up a product's guides, hints, and directives that visually lead users through their experience. In regards to print, it's kind of the same things with animation. In print, you use color, you use font size to lead the viewer through whatever you've created, right? Your headlines are bigger than your subheads, and that's bigger than your copy text. And that leads the viewer through whatever you've designed for print. Well, it's the same kind of thing in animation. You're just using animation itself to help lead the viewers along with those graphics and colors. The look and feel that we were just talking about, that is all relates to customer analysis, which you guys would relate to as a target market. You guys have already heard and practiced developing a target market, identifying a target market. It's the same thing with animation. They call it a customer analysis, but it's nothing more than the target market. That's what you're looking at. That's what you're identifying. That's what you're designing for, is that specific target market. And you do that through your design research, how to address the solution using visual graphics. Branding and graphic development. Emphasis on your company and solution, no matter the animation, whether it's going to be on that company's website or it's going to be hosted on the other company's website. It still needs to be branded for that company. Is it necessary to have a logo on an animation that's going to be on that company's website? No, but it still should be branded. Meaning those colors, by now you guys have all practiced branding quite a bit. The company's colors, things like that should be used in the animation. It should be branded for the company. Now, if that animation is going outside of the company's website, meaning it's going to be a Google ad, or it's going to appear on Yahoo or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, yes, it is very important that it be specifically branded for that company, meaning it should include the logo. It should include a phone number, a website address, that sort of thing. So it kind of depends on specifically where that animation is going to be, on how much branding needs to be done to it. User guides and storyline. Lead the viewers with your graphics. It's kind of the same in animation as what you guys are doing in print. The only difference is in animation, those things are on the move. But it's still important to lead the viewers with your graphics, with your color, with your font, with your characters, that sort of thing. So not only are they moving, you also need to be able to lead those viewers if it wasn't moving. So that's the kind of way you design it at first, as just a flat design. Not necessarily including that animation on the get-go. Set out your graphics first, set out your color plan, and then you add that animation to it to help lead your viewers and to make it entertainment. That motion is more for entertainment purposes versus leading the viewer through your animation. Responsiveness and interactivity. That's a big thing, especially nowadays. I mean, how many ads have you seen that you can't click on? Either a button or just the ad itself, and it takes you to a website or another page within that website. Think about all of the online shopping you do. You know, there's always those big banners across the top of the page that show the different sales or highlight popular items and things like that. And you can always click on them and you know it's going to take you to that item's page. That is interactivity. And you do that by sketching and storyboarding. That's where you start coming up with your ideas for not only an animation itself, but also for how to make it interactive. Interactivity and animation tell a story. Make your motions clean. Incorporate the principles of animation, and we will go through those principles. Adaptation to all device screen size, HTML5 canvas, multiple outputs. Now, with HTML5 canvas, if you output as like an OMG file, that can be directly inputted to an HTML website, HTML5 website. And if that website itself is responsive, the container holding that OMG file will be responsive, and therefore the animation is responsive. In some instances, though, you may be asked to export from multiple screen sizes, meaning they're going to want that animation in a desktop size, they're going to want that animation in a tablet size and a mobile size. So you may be at some point, if you get into doing this, asked to actually give them 3 different sizes. It's the exact same animation, you just have to scale them down, make them smaller in the size they need them to be, which is easily done in Animate. There's a great little tool in Animate that will allow you to automatically shrink things down to fit your stage size. So it's really simple to do in Animate. Implementation with developer, prototyping, construct, and edit. And that's where an animatic comes into play, because it's really hard for your customers, and unless you're working in the team, you consider your customers your developer. But it's really hard for customers or people that actually don't do the animation to look at a storyboard and understand what the animation is going to look like, because the storyboard is a flat design. There's no movement. And so sometimes it's really hard for your customers to actually see the animation, and therefore that's why you make something called an animatic. And the only difference between a storyboard and animatic is the animatic flips through your scenes, making it look like it's moving. Although there's really no animation, it's just a flat design and animate that's a few frames long that flips and makes it go. You may have to add to your storyboard, and you're going to end up with more frames than you may originally had so that you can demonstrate more of that animation. But it's not a lengthy process. It's pretty simple. User experience. And user experience is a little more in-depth. User experience is basically all about how the user, the viewer, feels after they watch it, or what they do after they watch it. Good user experience, for example, in a sales ad, how do you know you have good user experience? Because the person watching that bought the item, or they at least went to the page to look at that item. That's good user experience, and it worked. The buttons worked, the video was seen properly, the sound worked, all of that good stuff is part of user experience. And usually to get good user experience, you want to do basically a competitor's analysis, an assessment of the strengths and weaknesses of the current or potential competitors. What are the other guys doing? There's always competitors, and the best way to see what's working is to analyze the competitors. What are they doing? How are they selling this product? What are they doing differently than what my customer's doing? That sort of thing will help give you ideas and inspiration for making your own animated ad. Your customer analysis, identifying the target audience, ascertaining their needs, and then specifying how the product satisfies these needs. Now, a lot of the customer analysis comes from the research you already did for user experience when you were identifying the actual customers. And that's where your target audience comes in. So you're ascertaining their needs. Usually, if a company is targeting a certain set of people, a certain set of demographics, then they already have a somewhat of an understanding of their expectation, their needs. You're the one that has to take that and make it a solid foundation to make sure it addresses and is given to them in a way that that specific demographic will receive it. And then specify how the product satisfies their needs. That needs to be clear always in your animations, because there's not a lot of text in animations. This is not something they're going to sit and read a flyer about or a postcard. This is a 10 to 30 second animation. So you've got at max 30 seconds to relay a clear message, a call to action, and get them to do something. That's not very long. So that message has to be very, very clear. And you need to make sure that in that message, you're making sure that you satisfy their need for needing that product or needing that service, or giving them that message in a way that's acceptable to them. Product structure and strategy, a representation of the way in which the parts of a product fit together and interact, organized in levels of detail based on structure. A product structure is used to manage changes, testings, problem resolutions, complex products with large number of independent parts and functions. And now, that's going to, for most of you, that's going to be a very small thing. But as an example of something that would have to get very complex, think about, any of you shopped for a new car lately? How many of you, when you were shopping for those new cars, seen a little animation for certain cars? Those are pretty lengthy, and they're pretty in-depth with different components and parts. A lot of pieces make up a car. And there are a lot of things you have to address in a very short amount of time in order to actually sell that car. Yes, a lot of car parts. And when buying a new car, we look for specific things, right? Gas mileage, the safety. We may look at airbags, where they're located. Definitely gas mileage. I think we all probably look at that. And the price, the MSRP, all of that has to be addressed. And if it's a 30-second ad, that's a lot of information all at one time, isn't it? So you have to be able to deliver that in a way that's not overwhelming to the viewer. And therefore, you've got to do a lot of strategy in that animation, how to lead them from this specific part of the car to this part, and so on. Content development, the process of researching, writing, gathering, organizing, and editing information, your storyline. When it comes down to it, guys, user experience is really more about the planning, the execution, and the process in which the design was built. That's the bottom line foundation. It's the process, the strategy, the bottom line, how it was built and whether or not it works. User experience design is the process of development and improvement of quality interaction between a user and all facets of its company. User experience design is responsible for being hands-on with the process of research, testing, development, content, and prototyping to test the quality results. User experience design is, in theory, a non-digital cognitive science practice, but used to define predominantly by digital industries. So what does that mean? Well, think about it this way. Everything you do, you have some sort of experience, right? Everything we do is an experience. We may have that same experience multiple times, but it's still an experience. So think about the last time you went to buy a new car and you had to go in and you had to talk to the salesman, and you walk out of that dealership either having a very good experience or one you could have done without, right? We have all been there. That's user experience. It's all about the way you were left feeling when it's all over. Does that make sense? So you got user interface, which is basically the way you feel when you're watching it. It's the look and feel, why it's happening. And you get user experience is what you're left over with. Was it good? Was it bad? And in order for it to be good, that means everything had to be planned from the beginning. Otherwise, it may not end up being so good at the end, right? That's how they fit together. They kind of overlap and intermingle with each other. Yes, they do. But they are two different things. Part of user experience is your wireframing and your prototyping. And we're not going to be doing any wireframing as far as this animation goes because it's going to be short and simple. But those of you that already had a web design class are very familiar with wireframing because we definitely do that in web design. In larger art animations, things get wireframed. That's the way they happen. Shorter animations, it's not usually necessary because they're 30 seconds long and they're pretty simple, and there's really just no need for wireframe itself, but there is a need for storyboard. And that's where your prototyping comes in. That's the storyboard itself. Your testing can be done with animatics and responsiveness, development and planning, how to solve the problem. That's where your storyline comes in. The thing about an animation is there is always a problem and there's always a solution. So in order to get a good animation, you have to identify both those. What's the problem? What's the solution? And usually they're very simple to identify, as long as you're not overthinking it. Execution and analytics, coordinating with the UI designer. Now, a lot lately, especially, these fields have become combined. And rarely do you still find a UI designer and a UX designer and them be two separate people. You usually have a UI and UX designer and it's one person. And they're the people that basically check all the designers and make sure they're on track and do all the communication with any programmers or anything like that. Small animation, you won't get into this kind of depth, but projects, if you plan on getting into animation and you work on larger projects or even in some gaming, then you're going to be working on in a team environment and you will have a UI UX designer and there will be developers and you will each have a little piece of the pie that you're in charge of. But in order to get the whole pie, that means everybody has to communicate. And you all have to stay on target. And you all have to make sure that what you're doing is going to go with the overall project or what your partner is doing or what the developer 2 states away is doing. So there's usually someone in charge. You've got your UI UX designer, and then there's usually a developer coordinator, which is coordinating with all the developers to make sure they haven't run into any trouble with the code that may affect the graphics that your graphic designers are building, or that may affect any animation that you have some specific animators working on. And then you have somebody that's tracking the goals and the integrations, meaning you've got somebody that's making sure everybody's on target and taking any finished products and sending them where they need to go so they can be placed and tested to make sure they're working and there isn't any small problems that come up. And then usually the same person that tracks the goals and integration usually is in charge of the analysis and iterations, which is they've sent it off, they've tested it, taken a look at it, and they will come back to whoever needs to make any modifications, tweaks, or anything like that, and have them do that, and then take it back and test it again. And finally, they are the person that goes through the final published program and makes sure everything's there, it works, there's no final tweaks that needs to be done before it actually goes back to the customer or gets released to the public. Think about the thing we just talked about while you watch this animated example. What do you think about the UI and UX? Okay, guys, 90% of the time the sound works on this video, but if it doesn't work and you can't hear it, let me know and I will bring it up in my browser.
Is it possible to love a bank? Well, it's surprising who you can build a relationship with, isn't it, dear? I mean, take BOQ, for instance. They're not like the other banks. They do more to get to know you better. They really do. So, yeah, I guess it is possible to love a bank.
You can hear it, but you can't see it. Okay, let me pull it up in my browser and let's see. Yeah, that will work better. Okay, let me share my browser. Let me rewind this. There we go. Maybe. Come on, YouTube, not today.
Is it possible to love a bank? Well, it's surprising who you can build a relationship with, isn't it, dear? I mean, take BOQ, for instance. They're not like the other banks. They do more to get to know you better. They really do. So, yeah, I guess it is possible to love a bank. her favorites.
Okay, guys. Now, what did you think about the UI and UX of that video?
I have asked one of many pieces in my life.
It wasn't. It was a cute little short animation, wasn't it? It was just a little over 30 seconds long. Now, did any of you notice the bird? Yes, you notice the bird in the trees. Those are little animation extras. Was it necessary to have that bird there? Nope, it wasn't necessary, but it was entertaining, wasn't it? Those are the little animation extras, just the little things you can put in just to make something a little more entertaining, just to add some action to the background. But did you notice how simple those graphics were? Those were very, very straightforward, very simple graphics. So all those times I've said already, keep it simple. I repeated that several times yesterday. That's what I mean. Keep it simple. Because the simplest stuff can be the most entertaining and usually is. It's usually much more easier to animate simple graphics versus trying to animate a graphic that is very real-like, has that real-life feel, so to speak. So keep your graphics simple, because usually the most simple things are not only the easiest to animate, they are the most entertaining because they're easy to watch. Week 1 overview. As with any project, whether it is for print or web, we must address 3 things. What is the message? Who is the target audience? And what are we motivating them to do? Since animation is something that end users watch over time, we need to storyboard our ideas. And Lori, you can't see the screen? I have a green box around it. How about now? Still no? Let's try again. How about now? Okay, let me stop sharing and let's try this from the very beginning. I have 3 Microsoft PowerPoints coming up and none of them are open. There's my Illustrator. How about now? Good, okay. Since animation is something that the end user watches over time, we need to storyboard our ideas. So, what's a storyboard? It is a series of drawings to pre-visualize different frames, shots of a movie. This is an essential tool for the designers to get a sense of what the movie is going to look and feel like to present to the client. What does it look like? There are several approaches to creating a storyboard. It can be simple sketches to detailed drawings. The approach depends on how complicated the animation will be. Whichever approach is used, it needs to show enough detail to get the concept across to the client. Creating an effective storyboard, a few things should be taken into consideration. It must convey the story effectively and be as close as possible to what the animated story is telling. This means when someone is reading the storyboard, they should instantly get the story's concept and meaning. Here are a few tips to keep in mind. Write captions under each frame or drawing. Use arrows to show camera movement or object movement. Color objects to differentiate from background to foreground if necessary. The structure of the storyboard can vary, but it is a good idea to have the frame done in the same aspect ratio as the final animation. Try and keep all frames and descriptions on the same page. 6 is a good number to start with and add if necessary. 6 can usually effectively convey an animation that runs 15 to 30 seconds long, depending on its complexity. So let's talk about the aspect ratio for a minute. Let's say you're making an ad that is shaped like this. It's going to be just a little column on your website, right? And let's say that that column is going to be 350 pixels wide by 750 pixels high. So when you make your artboard and illustrate and animate, can you make your artboard the exact size you need it? Absolutely, if you know. But you're not going to be able to make your artboard in Illustrator for your storyboard that exact same size, are you? Because it's going to be huge. That's a pretty big square. 350 pixels by 700 pixels is pretty good size square. And it's going to take up a lot of room, which means you're going to have more than one artboard. You always want to try and keep your storyboard on one artboard if possible. So you simply make a square with the same aspect ratio. That means your squares for your storyboard may look something like that. It's the same aspect ratio, meaning it's the same sort of rectangle. The same basic proportions as far as width and height go. Maybe not the identical size, but the same shape. Does that make sense? So if you're making a banner ad and your banner is that shape across the internet page, that means your storyboard, each of your storyboard scenes may look like that. It's a smaller version, but the exact same shape. Not necessarily the same size, but the same shape. So here's an example of a storyboard done by a designer for a self-promotion animation. While your subject matter is different, the idea is the same. As you can see, 12 scenes were used. As mentioned above, 6 can be effective. If you use less than 12 in the template, be sure to delete the unused blanks and size and arrange the fill on the page, rearrange those boxes so that they cover the page and it looks good and then it looks professional. That's the idea there. But you can see this. The animation is gonna go up, open up to a blank screen. It's gonna be blue. And then there's going to be some clouds float across the sky. And as those clouds get to about the center of the stage, a balloon is going to start to float on. And with that balloon is going to come a box. And then the balloon's going to go up and the box is going to go down. It ends up on the ground and a light bulb comes out of it. It's a nice little short ad, but this gives you an idea of the storyboard itself. It's just kind of a few things at a time are happening. Goes from a blank screen. Could this easily have been done in 6 scenes? Absolutely, because you could have combined these first 3 together with a simple arrow showing that these parts were moving across the screen. And then you could have had scene 6, and then you could have had scene 5 and 6 here. So that would have been 1, 2, 3, 4. And you have 2 frames left. So we know the box is already going down. So you could have jumped down to show this scene 11. And then your scene 12. And that would have been your 6th scene. And you could have left out the smaller scenes that you didn't necessarily need, but added to the storyboard. So it's basically all up to you guys on how in-depth you make your storyboard. As long as I know what's going on, what's happening, you do that easily, but not only doing the descriptions, but using arrows to show me animation is moving this direction or that direction, sort of thing. Then it doesn't matter how lengthy your storyboard is, it just needs to be able to tell me exactly what's happening. 6 frames is the minimum. You really can't show anything in 3 frames. So keep that in mind. So your assignment instructions. First thing you're going to do is you're going to write a brief paragraph explaining what your animated advertisement is all about, what it is selling, and who the target audience is. Also include how long the animation is expected to take. For this assignment, the length of your animation should be 10 to 30 seconds long. You're going to then take that story. Basically, you're just writing me a little storyline, basically, is what you're doing. A little story about what the problem is. So if you're advertising a product, let's say, for example, you have a customer come to you and it is the beginning of spring, like it is now, and they still have a bunch of winter boots in stock, and they need to sell those winter boots. So, what's the problem? They have too many winter boots in stock, right? It's the end of the season. There's a problem. There's your problem. They have too many winter boots in stock. So, what's your solution to the problem? You need to sell those winter boots, right? That's what I mean by not overthinking it. Yep, it's hot, which is going to mean your animation is going to have to really, the sell either needs to be really good, but you need to make sure your animation gets lots of attention. So after you've created that storyline, simply tell me what the problem is, tell me what your solution is going to be, and you can talk about the type of graphics you're going to use, or your color scheme. Tell me a little bit about the company, about the target market. Just give me a little bit of information that will tell me not only about your advertisement itself, but why you're doing it and who you're doing it for. Create a storyboard. You're going to create your own, or you can use the Illustrator template that is in the assignment instructions. If you scroll down to the assignment instructions headings, I believe there's a set of 3 instructions, and the template is included. There's a link for the template in number 2. You can download that and use that template, or you can make your own. It's completely up to you. Just make sure all of your artboards are, all of your little scene, all your little square scenes are on one artboard and not a scene on each artboard. So put them all on one artboard, and you have to have at least 6 scenes or 6 frames. It says frames, but technically it should be scenes because each scene is going to have more than 1 frame. And then you're going to save your brief paragraph from number 1 and the storyboard together as a multi-page PDF document. Easiest way to do it is to either make an additional artboard in Illustrator if you're using the template, and put your paragraph on that artboard. That way when you save it as a PDF, it's automatically multi-page. Otherwise, you can go into Acrobat and you can combine PDFs and you can put the 2 of them together. And you're going to submit the single multi-page PDF, meaning you're going to submit 1 file. Be sure you name it DES246 assignment 1, your first name, your last name. So let's jump over to Illustrator and take a look at this template. Illustrator template is pretty much already set up for you, and the default size, the aspect ratio, is the same as the default artboard that's already set up in Animate. When you hit new, the artboard comes out to this basic aspect ratio. So it is already pretty much all set up for you. Your instructions up here: adjust the rectangles to match your animation's aspect ratio. These are on the base frame layer. Unlock the layer to adjust and relock and draw your sketches, or on the sketch layer, replace the text on the title of your animation. So let's take a look at our layers panel here. There it is. There's your base frame. And that's what holds all of your scene one, your squares, all of that good stuff. So you can put your sketches on the sketch layer. And it doesn't have to, you have your choice this week, guys. You can simply sketch this out using your pen tool or your pencil tool or your brush tool, whatever you choose to use, or you can make simple graphics. Next week is when you will start working on your final graphics. And I'll be honest with you, start working on your final graphics as much as you can this week. Do they have to be finished? Absolutely not. But if you start out on this week, you won't have near as much to do next week, and making those final graphics can be time consuming. Remember to keep them simple, but still drawing a character or anything takes some time, even if it's quite simple. Sometimes it takes more work to draw something really simple than it does to draw something complex. So as many of your final graphics as you can get done this week, do them, and the rest of it you can sketch out. You don't necessarily, and you need to remember this, guys, you are not being graded on your drawing skills. I'm not grading you on the graphics themselves. That is not what you're being graded on in this class. You are going to be graded on applying animation to those graphics. So whether your graphics are great or perfect, it doesn't necessarily matter. Next week we will go over some advanced drawing techniques, and I'll show you a few tricks and things like that that you can use. So if any of you, when you come up with your storyboard, if any of you are concerned about having to draw a certain thing, send me an email so I can add it to the list and see if I can't demo something that will help you get that graphic done, that sort of thing. But just keep in mind, you are not being graded on the graphics themselves, so don't freak out that you have to draw this stuff, because you're not being graded on the graphics themselves. You will be graded on the actual animation. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, well then. Let's do a demo on this storyboard, and we will create the storyboard of the demo I will do for this class. I think I am going to, we're going to start with a background. I'm going to do a coffee to go animation. And I'm simply going to set my background color. And basically, I think what I'm going to do is more of an animated infographic type thing. And that's going to have a lot of interactivity, but it's going to go frame to frame and do some different stuff. But as far as graphics go, there will be a few, but nothing truly complex. I'm going to start out with some minor motion. Oops. And then I'm going to use my arrow key to indicate motion here. And since my lines are wide, I'm going to turn this black. So I'll make sure everybody understands it's not part of the animation itself. So I'm going to have some lines come across here. They're not exactly even there right now. There we go. And I'm going going to have a few lines come out this side. They need to be white. And a few lines are going to come out this way. So I'm going to have a bit of animation going on in this first frame. I'm going to copy this square and paste it to my second scene. And while we have all of these lines, actually I could have copied this entire thing. I'm going to put it back here. And then I want to take just these white lines. And these. And then I need a top text box. Basically what's going to happen is these lines are going to come in and down, and they are going to turn in to the word coffee. So I'm going to make these lines just visible. And these are going to be spread out a little more, so let me go ahead and fix that. There we go, that's better. And the coffee is going to be white. And those lines will disappear into coffee. So I'm going to wait and put my descriptions on last. And once we get there and we have coffee to go, same background. I'm going to go ahead and put this on all of my layers here. So we have the coffee to go. And I think we will take that. It's going to be in the middle of the screen here. And I want to squish it. I'm going to type, create outlines. And I'm going to squish it. And then I think it's going to break apart into little circles. You're going to kind of float around the screen as that coffee breaks up. I think I'll have those words turn into a bit of a bigger circle, and that big circle will give off little circles. And then, so now I'm going to copy this, delete this, paste this one, because all of these circles are going to have to come back together. So I'm going to delete the big one. And all of these circles are going to come back together. Kind of like that. And they are in reality going to form a talk bubble. Let's see. They'll form a talk bubble, something similar to that. Not exactly like this, but I'll probably make my own talk bubble. But for now, you'll get the idea. So just select all of this. Gonna make my bubbles grow. Do some rearranging here. Looks like I'm gonna need to make sure I add another dot here. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy and paste a little one up here. Yeah. So now, basically what I did is I used that shape, and I'm going to create my own little top bubble here. Like that. And this is where I'm going to add a little bit of interactivity. Change my font up a little bit here. And then my talk bubble, of course, is going to break apart into dots again. And then I think on the last scene, we will do, I already have a graphic for a coffee cup, I believe. Well, I thought I did. I guess maybe I don't. I thought I had a coffee cup mock-up, but maybe not. So that means I'm gonna have to make a coffee cup. All right, Corley. Not bad for a coffee cup. So let's put some coffee in it now. Pretty good. And maybe we will have some steam coming off of it. I grab my brush. See if we can make some steam. put a seam there. And this is going to be my last frame, and there will be a Coffee to Go logo here. Since I really don't know about like this new tool in Illustrator, I'm going to simply do logo here. And make it smaller. And I'm actually going to put the company logo here. And I will probably put a phone number down at the bottom. I'm going to do that also. I'm going to have it go across the top of the screen. Way too big. And this is going to be my last scene. Now, if I go back and I start thinking about UI, UX, well, when they come up to this schedule now, I want them to know that they can click there, right? So I need to do something that's going to indicate that. And I need to make some arrows for these other artboards. So how do you guys usually know when you need to click on something? Is it just because you know, or is there usually something that indicates you need to click there? Or that you can click there? Think about when you're on a website and you've seen banner ads, things like that. How do you know that you can click on them and go somewhere? You need a direction to continue. What do they usually give you as a direction? Sometimes they flash, yes, or when you roll over them, they change colors. An arrow or a dot to click, those sort of things. So I could do something simple that's kind of flashy to get their attention, like click now. And it doesn't even have to be big. I can pull it up here. Oops. And let's make it a different color so it kind of stands out. Like that, and I'm going to make this flash. Easiest way to indicate something is flashing is to add some little lines to it. And we've got something semi-flashy, but this is what I mean, guys. Your storyboard does not have to be huge. It doesn't have to be too in-depth. Keep your animations simple. Usually simple is the most entertaining, and it's easier to learn when you're first starting out if they are simple. And while this doesn't look like much, there's actually going to be quite a lot of animation in this animation because so many things are moving. I need to make arrows here. And here, I want to just show that this is moving in all 4 directions. Like that, and then I'm going to copy these. And move them to this artboard. So there is a basic 6-frame animation. It's going to be my animation. Now there's going to be actually a lot going on during that animation. This is just a basic, simple storyboard to give everybody an idea of what's going to be going on. So now to clean this up, make it look professional, I'm going to go back and unlock that base frame layer. And then highlight all of these squares that I don't need, the ones that are blank. I'm going to empty them. Now I know I need scene 4 to go down with scene 5 and 6, so I get 3 on a row. So I'm going to highlight all of those, move frames 5 and 6 down, take number 4, put it over here, move 6 to the center of the page. About like that. Oops. I forgot a text box there. And then I'm going to take them all. If you only have 6 scenes, there's plenty of room in your artboard to put that paragraph. So you don't even need it on a second page. You could simply bump your storyboard down and put your paragraph across the top there. Otherwise, I'm going to center it on this page. And I'm going to add a heading with the company name. So then we need to get into our description. So the first one, I'm going to do animated lines, nurse acting to create, copy to go text. And lines intersecting and combining to create large circle. Let's see, lines intersecting and text combining to create large circle. And then of course this one, large circle, oops, breaking into smaller circles. Smaller circles create a top bubble. And then I need my description on 5 and 6. Looks like I accidentally erased it, so I'll just copy and paste the one from 4 here. Oops, top bubble breaking apart, circles, leave screen. And then the last one. I'm gonna do the last scene. I think we'll do coffee cup, spins in, steam starts, logo appears, phone number scrolls. And I didn't do an arrow for that phone number, so I'm going to add that. And black. Arrow. Oh, it's back to the front. Oh, we're on the wrong layer. Oops, oops, oops. I need to go back to the correct layer for that. Let's try that again. Arrow here. Yes. Except for the wrong end. I want it to go the other direction. There we go. And I could do an arrow to show this coffee cup spinning. Like this. There we go. I think that will work as far as arrows go. So basically, what you end up with, guys, just make it look professional, make it look designed, just don't throw it together. It's always important, even now, to get in the habit of making everything you do look as professional as possible, even if you're convinced your client will never see it. Because guess what? They tend to end up seeing everything you do. It happens. Whether it's because they come into your office unexpected and happen to see it on your desk or on your computer screen or whatever, it happens. And the worst thing that can happen is them seeing something that looks completely and utterly disorganized and unprofessional. You can even make your disorganized look professional. So start practicing that habit now, because the quicker you get in that habit, the less likely you are to get caught with something that looks like you don't know what you're doing. Because let's face it, they're your customers. They don't know anything about the creative process or being a graphic designer. That's what they hired you for. So they don't understand the fact that you may have sketches written on napkins or the back of receipts or just a million sketches on a piece of notebook paper. They're not going to understand those things. But if you put those together and you put them in a folder, or you scan them in and you put them on your computer screen, give it a heading. Little things like that will make things look a lot more professional, and they won't think a thing about them. That's just me talking from experience. And I have a really bad habit. Well, I shouldn't say I have the bad habit. My customers have the very bad habit, especially my freelance customers. But I do have some actual customers from the printing company I work for as a graphic designer find me in public. I'm being out to dinner with my kids, and a customer approached me about a job they want to do. Well, they're giving me all this information in the middle of a restaurant. Well, I'm sure you guys know by now, somebody starts asking you to do something and all these creative thoughts start going off in your brain. You have all these ideas and you may not be settled on one of them, but you have all these ideas. Well, the experience, you'll learn to start jotting down those ideas, because 2 hours later, you may not remember that idea and it may have been the best idea you've ever had and you can't remember what it was. Well, I learned a long time ago to start jotting that stuff down. And so you would not believe the number of logos that I have designed on a paper napkin. And most of the time it's because they have caught me out in public and told me they wanted something. Or introduced themselves and said, hey, you're Misty. George over at Lawn and Garden told me I need to get in contact with you about designing my logo for my new company. I'm like, yeah, great. And here I am out with my kids or out with myself, just doing whatever with friends, and have a customer approach me. Well, I learned a long time ago to jot those ideas down, so a lot of stuff ends up on napkins or the back of a receipt that happens to be in my purse. But I learned a long time ago, and from trial and error, to make sure I take that stuff and I redo it. Usually I'll redo it on a piece of graph paper so it looks a little more professional. Or I stick it in a folder that customer is never going to see. Carry a recorder. Yes, I've used my phone to record information to talk back to myself if the customers leave, and recorded my voice for instructions on what they wanted, or what did I need to look at Monday morning, or what have you, on my cell phone. So if you start now getting in the habit of making sure everything you do, whether it really truly means anything or not, looks professional, you are less likely to get caught in a situation where your customer's looking at you wondering if he hired the right person. That is not a very good feeling, and it's simply because they don't understand it. They don't understand the creative process because they're not a creative person. Otherwise, they wouldn't be hiring you to do it. So you have to keep that in mind. While it may truly not be unprofessional, because it's what we all do to our customers, it appears that way because they're business people. They hired us to be the creative one. Doesn't mean they understand the creative process at all. So if you get in the habit now of making sure you clean things up and make them look professional and neat and tidy, the less likely you are to get caught with your pants down, so to speak. So that's just a little word of wisdom from me, guys. If you start getting in the habit now, it will be second thought by the time you're finished with school, and it's just something you're going to do, and you won't be caught in that sort of situation. But as you can see, storyboard, guys, keep it simple. You do not have to use finished graphics. If you want to sketch the stuff out, you can. As you can see, my graphics, even finished wise, are not going to be anything huge. I have my coffee cup, and while that's not necessarily finished, it's close to finished. But just simple graphics, guys, keep it simple. And you can, if you feel better sketching, if you feel better sketching on a piece of notebook paper for your storyboard, that's fine. Take a screenshot of it, place it on an artboard. Make sure though that it is neat. Draw your squares out. If you're sketching, make sure you at least draw the scene squares and then sketch each scene into each little square. Don't just have a bunch of random stuff on a page, because I'm not going to be able to make sense of that. So if you feel better sketching it pen and paper or pencil and paper or whatever, that's absolutely fine with me. Just make sure you take a snapshot of it and put it on an artboard so you can save it as a PDF and turn it in that way. Otherwise, you feel free to draw it in Illustrator or do like I did and build some graphics. As long as it looks close and I can tell what it is, even if that means I have to read the description to figure out what it is, that's fine, guys. I'm not asking for finished graphics. I'm just asking you to show me the map of your illustration, your animation basic. What's it gonna do? What text is gonna be in it? That sort of thing. Make sense? So don't spend 1,000,000 hours trying to build your graphics this week. It's not necessary. Spend some time figuring out the animation you're going to do. That's going to be the most important part, writing that paragraph and figuring out what your animation is going to do. And as I've said 1,000,000 times, keep it simple, guys. You will thank me when we get into actually animating this stuff if you keep it simple. Otherwise, you're in for a lot of learning. The more complicated your animation is, the harder it's going to be to animate. Use simple movements, rotations, right, left, up, down, fade in and out. Those sort of things are perfect beginner animations, and that's where you are. This is a level 1 class for Animate. So keep it simple, because if you learn those simple tools first and you get them down, when you get into DS360 and I start teaching the advanced stuff, you're just going to fly through that class, and it's going to be so much fun because you already have the basics down. You've already learned those. You know how to use them. Yeah, we may have to refresh you a little bit, but it's going to be right there in your memory. And so you're already going to know that, and you can move on to the advanced stuff and end up with an awesome animation that you can use in your portfolio. Yes, and again, you can pick from the list of businesses that we went over yesterday. Nurseries, landscaping companies, coffee shops, cafes, anything you would like, you can do. It's easier to make it based on a real company because you can easily look at their target market, figure out what item you want to sell or what service you want to sell, that sort of thing. I've had students do all sorts of things. I had a student a couple of months ago do a animation for, is it Amco? Myco. Is Myco the place that fixes cars, you know, for scratches and small dents, and that Myco, something like that? You guys know what I'm talking about. I had a student a couple months ago do an animation for that company. I think it's Mako. Yeah, and they fix small scratches and dents in cars. His animation was really simple, but it was really cute. Shopping cart ran into a car and put a scratch on it. And it was just a simple, I think he had a rag that he wiped over it, and it was a Mako animation. So any company you can think of that gives you some sort of creative inspiration. So think about it. Maybe a company that you frequent or you buy with, or maybe a company in your town that doesn't even necessarily have a website or anything, but it's a company you're familiar with, and you've suddenly got some creative inspiration. I had another student that her husband owned a feed and tackle store, and they lived out in the country. They didn't have a website or anything, but she did a small animation to sell horse blankets for the winter. And it was a really cute animation too. She had some birds fly in with the horse blanket and drop it, and it landed on the horse. And very cute. So it doesn't necessarily matter what company it is, as long as you can figure out a way to do some sort of animation for a service or a product. It does not have to be a real company, Lori, but it may be easier for you if it is a real company. So it's depending on your creative ideas. If you have some sort of creative idea for a fictitious company, go for it. I'm leaving that absolutely in your hands, guys. Keep it simple and just sit back and think of it for a little bit and decide if you can come up with something that's simple, but it's going to be really cool that you're kind of excited about. This should be fun. And I want to make sure we keep it fun. So as long as you don't overcomplicate the animation, this is going to be fun, because the animation is fun, especially the basic small stuff, because it's easy to do. And there's a lot of stuff you can do with it that's really cool. And in the end, you're like, oh, wow, I did that. And your friends are like, oh, wow, how'd you do that? So keep that in mind while you're picking a company. Think about stuff until you have a creative idea. Oh, this would be cool for that. And that sort of thing. So don't overthink it, guys. Make it pretty simple. If for some reason you have an complete creative block and you can't think of a company, send me an email. I'll assign you a company. Or I'll give you a choice of a few real companies and see if you can't come up with a creative idea from there. So if you're having that sort of trouble, or if you've picked your company that you're having a creative block on getting your storyboard done, what you should do, come in and talk with me or Christy in the Student Success Center and let us walk you through it and help you come up with those creative ideas. Sometimes just having a sounding board start setting off those creative thoughts. So if you run into that kind of trouble, don't hesitate to reach out to me or to Christy. Any questions, guys? Or are we all good? Tomorrow, we will be going over the assessment. If you guys have looked ahead, you're going to be getting your first taste of a simple animation in Animate for the assessment. You have to do your own little small animation. Don't freak out. It's not going to be anything too elaborate. There's some specifics in the instructions that says your character has to have wings. Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to make those wings fly and go over building a path for your character to fly on, those sort of things. So be calm. We're gonna go through it, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. Tomorrow we'll get some practice in. I'll do a little demo, and then we're gonna practice doing what I showed you how to do. So tomorrow we will jump into introducing ourselves to Animate. You missed talking. You're free to turn on your mic, Lori. It's absolutely fine if you talk in here. You don't have to type. But if you like talking, Lori, you might think about doing a character with voiceover. It's really easy to make a character look like it's talking. Oh, you lost your voice. Oh no, been there, done that. That's never fun. Try some hot tea with some honey. It's okay, Hope. I'm going to post a recording, so if you missed anything important, you can go back and watch it. Okay, guys, well, if we don't have any more questions, then we'll meet tomorrow. And that will give us plenty of time to go through the demo and then get some hands-on practice. Don't worry if you're here and you don't want to participate in the practice, guys, you don't have to. It'll be fun, and it's the best way to get to know the tools, because when you're using them is when suddenly you have a question. And since I won't be right there with you while you're doing your homework, the best way to address those questions is if you practice with me in the lectures. I will walk you through everything you need to do, remind you what you need to do, but that tends to generate some questions. And then I'm right here to answer them. So don't be afraid to practice with me, but if you don't want to practice, you don't have to. You're welcome to just sit and watch. Absolutely, Hope. Start thinking about that assignment. If you don't get into building it tonight, that's no big deal, but at least start thinking about it, coming up with an idea, jotting down some ideas or some thoughts, things like that. Find your company you're going to use, that sort of thing. I'm glad, Lori. The idea is for this to be anxiety free. This should be fun, guys, because Animate is fun. And I would, like I said yesterday, I will be here with you guys 100% all the way through. If you need me, you just need to reach out to me because I can't read your minds, unfortunately. Most of the time, I wish I could read minds. It would help me a whole lot with my customers. But alas, I cannot. So if you run into trouble or have questions, email me. I don't mind the emails and text messages and things like that. Hey, it lets me know that you're concentrated on class and you've got questions. I'd be more than happy to answer them or schedule a time where we can get together and work on it. And again, like I said yesterday, I'm in the SSC 3 nights a week, guys. Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So if you can't come in while I'm in the SSC, need an extra time some other time, email me so we can find a time and I can open up my Zoom room. So don't hesitate to reach out if you're feeling anxious or nervous or you have questions. I'm right here with you 100% of the way. I am in the SSC Monday from 6 to 9 p.m. Mountain Time. On Tuesdays, on Thursdays from 8 to 11 p.m. Mountain Time. And on Fridays from 4 to 11 p.m. Mountain Time. So don't hesitate to come see me in the SSC or send me emails during the day if you have questions or you run into trouble or anything like that. Ah, hey, Belinda, you live in Mansfield. You're not far from me. All right, guys, then we will call it a night, and I will see you guys tomorrow, and we'll start getting introduced to Animate.